Over the last few years, the super naked sector has gone bonkers. But like all genres, there's super nakeds and there's super nakeds. And in this test, we've got the creme de la creme, the Ducati Streetfighter V4s.
cc, 200 horsepower plus V4 motor. You'd have thought this would be a bit of a pig to ride around town, really. Lumpy, snatchy, and just frankly too fast. But in practice, it's actually lovely. Of course, I think one of the biggest contributors to that is the electronics and how changing your rider modes really alters the throttle connection. So if you're in race mode, it is much more snappy, but we will come on to that, much more performance orientated. But in the street and sport modes, it really softens off the throttle in a lovely way that makes road riding, town riding, all very easy. It makes this whole town riding really an easy thing to do. It's quite surprised me, to be honest. But now we're on the open road, and this is where the Streetfighter V4 starts to make a bit more sense, because it is beautiful on the open roads.
While it was surprisingly good in an urban environment, of course the open road is where it belongs. There is something very right about the Streetfighter V4s. While our test conditions were mostly wet, a bit icy and rarely got above 5 degrees, it really impressed. The geometry and balance front to rear felt perfect, giving massive confidence and feedback to chuck into and through corners. Unlike the Panigale V2, which potentially felt a bit nose heavy to me, the Streetfighter was perfect. Loads of feedback, very accurate, and a lovely bike to cut through our mountain passes. Stability on the Streetfighter is incredible and undoubtedly the most planted front end of any super naked out there, giving you loads of confidence, and it makes for a very fast bike to make progress on. The Öhlins EC2 electronic suspension was also perfect. I set it in the dynamic mode where it adjusts compression and rebound damping depending on rider inputs to 6-axis IMU, and it felt great. No need for me to touch a thing. If I was going on track, I might adjust the electronic suspension to the harder settings, but for the conditions and road riding, dynamic mode felt awesome. Plush, supportive, and really premium. The seat was also fantastic. It's probably the most comfortable motorcycle seat I've ever sat on. Literally all day comfortable. Engine braking was also adjustable and a really nice feature. I personally preferred the stronger engine brake settings, allowing a faster corner entry, then using the engine brake to pull you around, and then the grunt of the motor to shove you out. Because the chassis geometry and suspension setup is so good, the electronic rider aids such as traction control weren't really needed or troubled. Don't get me wrong, I tried them all and then opted for the lower settings, maximum power and ABS level 1, even in sketchy conditions. I think what you have to understand is that the V4s has such a solid and balanced setup that there is an incredible mechanical grip available, and unless you're riding erratically, they're mostly in the background on the road. The quick shifter was also mega. It has a lovely pop on the upshift and a nice blip on the way down. Throttle map wise, on the road I tried all of the settings and preferred the softer road setting, which was beautifully fueled and refined for general road riding. More than how it performed, I felt special on the V4s, constantly aware that I was riding a super premium and beautiful motorcycle. From the cockpit, the dash to the switchgear, and the reflection of me riding on every shop window, and just the way it felt as a top draw motorcycle. The Streetfighter V4s is undeniably one of the most expensive super nakeds that you can buy in 2021/2022. But it literally takes you about 60 seconds of looking around the bike to see what you're getting for your money. Beautiful forged Marchesini wheels. Öhlins electronic suspension, front and rear. I think this is the EC2 version, which is the latest type. Brembo Stylema calipers. And those Stylema calipers are powered also by a matching Brembo master cylinder. And just while I'm up here on the cockpit, I can also see matching Brembo clutch master cylinder, an Öhlins electronic steering damper, and they've paired it with the rear master cylinder and brake caliper are also Brembo products. So yes, it's a premium motorcycle, but my gosh, has it got the right spec and the right trick toys to match. And my road riding on the Streetfighter had me wanting one. But riding a 207 horsepower super naked on the road doesn't tell the full story. So we headed to somewhere where we could stretch its legs. My God, that thing is rapid. Yeah, that thing is genuinely super bike fast, 1000cc modern super bike. The thing just pulls and pulls and pulls, and it's so revvy as well. You take it right up to 15,000 RPM, and it is just pulling constantly. But what this motorcycle does that is so impressive to me personally, having ridden quite a few super nakeds now, is it does something that's entirely unique to all of them, and really that's its stability, and really that's probably the trump card of the Streetfighter V4. I mean, this is such a stable motorcycle. I've done high-speed runs with the wheelie control turned on and with it off as well, and you know, it's not unmanageable. It doesn't flap the bars, it doesn't throw massive shapes. Yeah, okay, when you absolutely to the throttle stop, it does get a bit of movement, but you'd expect that from any sort of super bike even, never mind just a super naked. I mean, if you were to do that on a 1290 Super Duke R without wheelie control turned on, well, you'd be on your backside basically, and if you did that on a ZH2, you'd be tank slapped into oblivion, I'm pretty sure. There's something very, very right and very special with the setup, the mechanical setup of this Streetfighter V4. The geometry all comes together to make a really stable bike. That makes it very easy to ride it fast. And it's a massive thumbs up from me. A bit blown away, to be honest. Getting my head around thrashing a £20,000 motorcycle didn't take long. It was really confidence inspiring and unbelievable at full gas. Turning the throttle map to race mode livens the bike up a lot, and I now have no doubt that this is the fastest super naked out there. Obviously a massively powerful engine, but where others struggle to get that power down, the Streetfighter V4 has the chassis, the poise and the stability to catapult you down the straight, pinned to the throttle stop. It's incredibly fast. I've heard other reviewers out there say that it's not as playful as its peers. I think what they really mean is that the front wheel doesn't go skyward the second you open the throttle. The Streetfighter V4 is way too accurate for that, and the engineering priority has clearly been for ultimate speed and stability, hence the wings. But you can't have a bike that has a planted front end and one that launches it at the slightest whiff of the throttle. But don't get it wrong, the Streetfighter loves to throw a few shapes.
My name came up a lot, it sounds more when I was not around. Certain people that I know, they ain't no longer about.
Streetfighter V4 loves a bit of hooligan fun just as much as any super naked I've ever ridden. You just have to be deliberate with it. It loves a good wheelie, and with ABS set to level 1 you can pull skids, slides and of course rolling stoppies. And while we're on stoppies, the full Brembo brake setup and Stylema calipers were next level. And the ABS setup was awesome, allowing seriously hard braking with no ABS interference. I loved throwing a few shapes on the Streetfighter. I guess the litmus test for how much I enjoyed riding it was the fact that I put more miles on it than I've ever done with any other pressed loan bike. But on a bike I'm so taken by, are there any downsides to the bullet from Bologna? The foundation is that this bike is the real deal. This is the super naked of super nakeds, in our opinion, in my opinion. It's absolutely mustard. But like all Knox reviews, you know, we've got to show some balance, and like any motorcycle, they're not perfect basically. There's a couple of things that we've noticed. The first one is that the fuel range, the tank range isn't fantastic. We're sort of getting in between 80 to 100 miles per tank. It is a consideration, but that being said, it's an 1100cc V4 motor kicking out 207, I think, horsepower. So quite what we're expecting in terms of fuel economy. It's not the priority for this motorcycle, it's just that the range isn't very big. Also, if you're going to take it on a track, man, you are going to burn through some serious fuel. So make sure you've got loads of jerry cans with fuel with you, or a petrol station right next door to the track. The next downside is not really a downside, it's more of an observation, to be honest. The 1100cc V4 Streetfighter, when you sit on it, it doesn't feel like an 1100. It's small, it's tightly packed together. Now this sort of came into my mind because my good friend owns one of these. He's got a beautiful red one, and he asked me one night to help him put his radiator guard on. Well, I've taken quite a few motorcycles back to the frame recently. Putting a radiator guard on this thing was like 3 hours, busted knuckles, sore fingers, and like a million swear words later we actually got it done. But what it did reveal is this motorcycle is incredibly tightly packed together, and the old adage about Ducati technicians not being mechanics, they're actually magicians, really rang true to me at that point. This wouldn't be a bike I'd be personally confident to work on because it is so tightly packed together. They're very complicated motorcycles. Last couple of tiny things. If this was my own bike, I'd have definitely opted for the heated grips. Now, this bike hasn't got heated grips applied, but it's still got the button there. So you press in, and it's been freezing. I mean, it's been like 2 degrees this morning. I'd have wanted the heated grips on, and that would be a massive frustration for me if I'd have bought this bike, got the icon here, but can't actually turn the heated grips on. So if you're gonna own one of these, get the heated grips. And finally, And I can't even believe I'm saying this because I would normally never ever use cruise control, but this bike is so fast and it's so easy to go over the speed limit. I just think some sort of electronic mechanism to either limit your speed or put cruise control on would just keep you inside the law sometimes as well. But that being said, you know, it's a super naked. We're not saying that that's a mandatory thing. It's just an appreciation that this bike is so fast and it's so easy to go over the speed limit. Like any motorcycle, they all have pros, cons and compromises. And the only one I mentioned that is really of consideration to buyers is the fuel range, which really isn't great. But the pros far outweigh the compromises. It looks the part, rides the part, and more importantly, makes you feel the part. From the street to the road to slammed against the throttle stop, it frankly blew my socks off. The Ducati Streetfighter V4s is the real deal. And in my mind at least, the very best super naked available to buy today.